So now what we're going to do is send data from your front end to your backend. That is, we have a simple form here for the code for it is right here, and we'll send data using this back to our backend, right? We'll receive it here. So this right here is going to be something called REST APIs. Okay, we're going to follow something called REST APIs. REST API, let's just go over what API is first. An API is basically an application programming interface, right? We don't need to go too into that. What we're basically going to do is we're going to send data from our front end to our back end. Let's just focus on that, right? And to do that, we are going to use a method, right? These are called methods, and this particular method is called post. So as you can see in this form, we have a method attribute, and that attribute is set to post, right? It says HTTP post method. That is what it means. So to receive that post or the data that is going to come in, I am going to write a function right here. Okay. So I'll write a function. I'll just say, okay, contact us. I'll just say input, right? And then I also define a function input. And what this will do is, now one more thing I have to do here is that I have to specify that it accepts post. So let's just, the general methods that you can use are get, post, put, and delete. Okay. But we don't need to use all of them. For our general purposes, get and post are enough, right? So post method lets us send data from our front end to our backend. Get method is used to just receive data from the backend to the front end, right? So is that clear right now? So basically, all these methods allow get, right? It is default. Post, you have to allow it specifically. So now I allowed a post method, and then I'll also define if. Now we are going to include one more input. So we're going to import something called request, right? So request, what these methods are, in essence, they are requests, right? From the front end to the back end. It's a request. And for that request, we'll send back a response. Okay, these are all concepts you'll study later on. I'll just go over them briefly right now. So let's just know that there are requests. Then what I'll do is if request, right? The thing that calls this route uses the method of post, then that particular request will have a form, right? That is because we are using a form right here, right? A form action. That means when it gives back stuff, it will be in a form format. Okay, these are all again advanced concepts. Let's not go too into that. Let's just know that I'll get a form with a name, or rather not this name, some name. What exactly that name is, we can see it here, right? It says input, type is text, and name is name itself, right? Don't bother about this ID. We just need this name because this name is what it uses to send whatever data you enter in the front end, right? So let's just say I write hi here. That will be sent back as name. Okay, so it will be like a dictionary object, something like this. So I'll just have a name implies hi, or rather name has this value hi. It will be a dictionary like this when it goes back to your backend, that is. So this is something called JSON. It's just a Python dictionary, but then when you use it in a web context, it's called JSON. JSON means JavaScript object notation. Okay, again sidetracking right there. So we'll get a name, right? And let's just say for that name we'll return hello plus name, or yeah, for the now we'll just do that, I guess. So now I'm saying that it has to call input, right? So the root here is not actually important. We're going to specify what exactly root is going to call using this action. Inside this action, we use something before, right? We use URL for. URL for tells the browser where to look for stuff, right? So here what we're going to do is we're going to put a URL for. What exactly we're going to give a URL for this particular function, right? And what root is it running on? Input. Okay. So if I give this particular function name as the input here, then this particular root will be the one that gets called. Again, might seem confusing. Try it out. You'll understand better. So let's just say URL for. Again, one more thing I'll like to cover here is that double quotes signify Jinja, right? Is the templating. I'll just put h3 here, and inside that I'm going to put something. Let's say name. So this right here will not exactly work. Why? Because name doesn't exist, right? It is not a variable. I didn't send back anything. Okay, well, I'll come back to that, right? I'll just finish this first. So URL for what am I going to call? Input, right? So I'll just say input here because that's the name of the function I need to call. So now I say hi here. What happened? Okay, so what exactly happened here is that it did work, but for some reason the app did not reload itself. So just reloaded it and then it worked. So yeah, this is correct syntax, right? There's nothing wrong with this. It's just Flask doing Flask stuff and Python doing Python stuff, right? So like I told you last time, input. So it goes to this particular function, and what exactly will it return? It says hello name, right? So whatever I give here, that will be the name. So let's just say I write IPS, right? And then I give submit. This submit has to be type submit as well. Okay, its value can be anything, but the type has to be submit, because what this does is that this particular submit will call this form, and when that form is called, it will run this action, which means it will go to this particular root and use this method to give whatever data is inside that form. So when I type IPS, it will go where? Right here to input. And in what does input have? It gets whatever the name you entered is, and then just prints hello and that name, right? Right. So there we go. We have sent data from your front end to your backend. Now let's come back to sending data from the backend to the front end again. So right here, if you have noticed previously, this particular line, right? It didn't work. Why exactly didn't it work? Because there was no variable name, is what I said to you. What that means is that when you're rendering templates, you can also send with it data, right? So what I can do here is that I can say some name that will get rendered along with that index.html. This lets me pass variables of data which I can access through the front end, right? I'll just put name equal to Sachin here, which apparently Copilot likes. If I reload it, I'll get Sachin here. So why exactly did this work this time? Because there was a variable called name, right? You can even extend this further by, instead of sending one value, I'll send a list of values, right? Since first one is Sachin, I'll just do second one as Dhoni, and I think that's enough. So now, as you can see, it's showing both of them, right? It doesn't care what variable it is. It's just showing me whatever the name is. What type it is, it doesn't care. Let's just say I only want the first one. Similar to how you use lists, you just have to specify the index. So now I just have Sachin, right? And same way, if I go name of the first index in name, I'll get Dhoni. All right. So Next thing we're going to look at in Jinja is if and for. So last time we used a list to store stuff, right? Sachin and Dhoni. This time what we'll do is that we'll use a condition and a for loop here. Okay. So let's just say this is another style of Jinja syntaxing where you, instead of using double curly braces, you'll use a curly brace and a percentage. This is used to specify functions, right? Functionality as in conditionals and loops. So first let's just go for condition. If I get a name, right? Or if name has the index 2. Actually, that might cause an error. I'll just say if there's a name. Then I have to print that name and then I'll end if, right? So this time I can see that I did get a name, so I had this run, right? If instead I had some other variable, let's just say score. Score is a variable that doesn't exist. That means it won't run, right? Pretty basic conditionals. Another thing you can do is using this, you can use for I in, right? So this works same as the condition and how you're used to regular loops, right? This just goes through every iteration in the list and then prints that item. We'll just reload it. You'll get Sachin and Dhoni in different lines printed in H3, right? So that's all we are going to cover in the Flask series, guys. This should cover all the basics you need to build your website. Anything further, I'll prefer you explore yourselves and learn, because trying it out is again the best way to learn this stuff. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you.